Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Women on Top podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Lynn, and with over 15 years of business experience, I became truly passionate about finding ways to support and hear from way more women. And what we know to be true is that women thrive when they are in their favorite position, on top in business, in relationships, in personal growth, and on top in being real and authentic to who the hell they are. So I invite you to sit back and enjoy the Women on Top podcast. Well, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Women on Top. I am so beyond excited for today's conversation. I've really been looking forward to this. Today, I have sitting with me Ashley Kehr, who is a real estate investor, educator, and she is the co-host of the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie podcast that I have been listening to religiously. So I'm really looking forward to diving in. And since buying her first rental in 2014, she's really grown a huge portfolio of over 40 units, which is just insane. She went from full-time accounting to now thriving investor, and she's helping others achieve that same financial independence as well. Ashley, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's really tremendous what you've been able to do. And I feel like the way that you speak about real estate is really relatable. And that's why I've been following, especially the Rookie podcast, just because it really is tangible and like breaks down these stories that apply to somebody like me, which is why I thought it was just such a great opportunity to bring you as an expert to this community of women who has also had the same type of hunger for this, for real estate investing. So I know you began with the single rental property. So I'd love to just start there and have us, talk to us about that process and like what challenges maybe you faced with financing or finding tenants, and how did you overcome that? Would love to just hear some of the origin story there.
Yeah, sure. So I actually was an accountant. I did not like it. I did not like sitting at my desk every day. It got to the point where I was just going on Pinterest because I just was so bored at my job. So I decided to quit my job, and I had a friend growing up, her dad, reach out and say, I just need someone to help me get organized. And what that ended up meaning was to be a property manager of his 40-unit apartment complex. And so that was really my first introduction to real estate. I didn't really know anyone else investing in real estate at that time. He had another main business, so I really didn't even have him to like teach me or to learn from because he was focused on his other business. So yeah, I had to learn everything from scratch. And during that time, I loved it. I started to see like the power of real estate. And so I went to his son and I said, look what your father is doing. We should do this. So we started talking about it a little bit. And so I found my first property was a duplex. And I was so confident in the fact that it was going to be a good deal, that I knew how to run the numbers on it, that I could manage it, that I could find tenants. It was like right around the block from where I was already managing the other 40 units. So I said to my partner, that, we would need his capital to fund the deal, but I'll take care of everything else. And he said yes. So we structured it in a way that was beneficial to us both, where we were 50-50 equity partners. And then he also held the mortgage on the property. So for the capital that he put in, it wasn't just like, I'm giving you my money and we'll see what happens with the deal. It was, he was getting a monthly payment of principal and interest, just like you would pay the bank. And so that gave him more of a sense of security. So I gave up that 50% equity, 50% of the cash flow every month, and he made 5.5% interest on the money he invested into the deal. So that was like a great opportunity for him, but it would have been way harder for me to get started. So I never, like right now, I would never ever do that deal with someone, but so it got me started, and we're still partners today on a couple deals.
Yeah, that's awesome that you were able to have something that was mutually beneficial to both of you. And, I love the way that you just got started and went in with him, and that was the way everything launched. So why would you never do that deal again? I'm just really curious. Like, why would you
Yeah.
not
I
advise
I
people?
think that I know my value now, and he's gotten accustomed to, having this luxury of me taking care of everything and him
Ah,
just sitting back and watching his wealth
okay,
grow from the properties,
sure.
and so we've started to, things as we buy, we've structured them differently as time has gone on, but I think, like, the big takeaways from that first deal is, like, it's okay for it to not be fair. It's okay to give up more equity, give up more of the deal to get yourself started and to get yourself more experience. And I
Yeah.
think like another thing too is this was like conversations over time with him. This was just planting the seed of like, we should invest in real estate. Wasn't like, I got this deal. I need you to give me $100,000. So
Yeah.
I think building that relationship with someone first and, first of all, seeing if they have the capital, but like talking to them about it first instead of just being direct, approaching them and like, I need the money now, building it up over time.
Yeah. I love that relationship piece for sure. It's huge, I feel like, in this game. If you could go back and you were starting this all over again, what would you do? Like, where would you start with your first investment if it wasn't that story that you just told?
I would do a live and flip or a house hack. Like, I
Okay.
think that is the easiest way to get started because you need somewhere to live anyways, unless you're lucky enough to get to still live in your
Yeah.
parents and not pay anything. But I think that you have living expenses. You either pay rent, you pay a mortgage, you have that cost of living. Why not maximize that opportunity? And with the live
Yeah.
and flip, I'm actually doing one now where I'm going to live in it for 2 years. We're slowly fixing it up. And then after 2 years, we're going to sell it. And we're going to use the primary residence tax exclusion where I don't have to pay taxes on that income. So over
Yeah.
the 2 years, I'm getting tax free income where it would take me many more years to make that same amount of income because I'd have to pay taxes on it. So that I think is a great way to get started because you have to live somewhere anyways. Then the next thing is house hacking, either renting out by the room, uh, renting out, getting a small multifamily, renting the other units, renting a garage ADU or something like that. So I think those are like the easiest ways to get started because they will decrease your cost of living and you can put money back into your pocket.
Yeah, so good. I would love to at some point, excuse me, have a duplex and be able to do that, or even
Yeah.
a multi-unit situation. And so it definitely gives me aspirations. I started with just a condo in the Seattle area and kind of didn't know that I was going to rent it out. It just worked out that way. But I was glad to have done the 2 years kind of by mistake, but that worked out really well because then I ended up with long-term tenants in that property. So you transitioned from the accountant, from being an accountant to now full-time real estate investing. Was there kind of like a pivotal moment for you that made you then take the leap? I think a lot of, especially women that I talk to who are, kind of on that fence, it's like, when do I let go of this thing to then go full-time into the thing that I'm, really loving? So what was that moment for you?
Yeah, so I only lasted as an accountant for 6 months. I'd been an intern for 2 years in college. I graduated. I
Wow.
kind of took the summer off and then I started full time in September and I quit in February.
Oh my gosh.
And then I started to become a property manager for this other investor. So I worked for him for a very long time. And it's just my real estate investing coincided with that. And I think like the decision to transition from that was like, first of all, health insurance was actually a big play in that. Like
Yeah.
having, a job, getting the health insurance coverage, it is so expensive. And
Wild.
either way, it's expensive, but
Yeah.
it's a lot more difficult to get and to have good coverage that's affordable if you are not employed by an employer that's paying a percentage. And I had great health insurance benefits through this employer. So that was really a big deal. The kind of mental point that was like, this is time, is that I realized how much stuff I was doing for somebody else, how much I was
Mm,
building for them, how much wealth I was growing, and I could be using that time to do it for myself. There were so many other things that I could be doing besides just managing my rental properties even, that I could pursue some other passions that I had that would monetize to cover my income. along with the rentals, and I could have more time to stabilize my rentals, make them more efficient. And like one thing I did was turn a property into a short-term rental, and that has highly supplemented a lot of my income that I got from that W-2 job just by doing that. So I think and then after I did quit, it was just like this, oh my gosh, I should have quit sooner. And I think
Really?
that was really like the pivotal moment. But it's always like I listen to a lot of like the fire community,
Yeah.
and they're always talking about like my worst case scenario is everybody's regular day. I go back to a job. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. I love what you said. Like the worst case scenario is that you go back to the job that you already have. And in your case, it's just worked out. I mean, beyond probably what you can imagine. I'm curious if you ever saw yourself as a real estate investor. And kind of the reason I asked that is I never thought in my wildest dreams I would be interested in this whole world. And now I'm trying to learn more and really interested in having multiple properties. So I'm curious for you, did you ever see yourself that way? Were you always interested in real estate or finance or yeah, what
Um,
was
Finance, yes, because I actually had a dual degree in accounting and finance.
okay.
But as far as real estate, I didn't even know what real estate investing really was. I was more focused, I guess, on like building up my 401k and
Yeah,
investing into an IRA, like
right.
the standard retirement. And even when I became a property manager, I literally didn't even know what a property manager was until it's like, okay, you collect the rent. I need somebody to do that.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing at first, and for 2 years, I spent all my time learning, researching, and also dealing with managing this property on the fly before I actually got, like, full, systems and processes, software in place, things like that. But, yeah, I definitely did not see myself, prior to being a property manager doing anything in real estate.
Yeah. I feel like quite honestly, what I've associated real estate investing with has just been like, oh, that's a whole different world. That's like not real. Like I
Yeah.
don't know why, but
Like,
do you,
development companies,
yeah.
like,
This is a scam. Like these
Yeah,
people, I don't
yeah,
know, or they're really wealthy. That's the other
yeah, yeah,
association I always had. It was like, oh, this is for people who have a lot of money.
yeah.
So I guess that brings me to my next question, which is for somebody who doesn't have a lot of capital right now, but they're like, gosh, how can I get into the game? I mean, I think you brought up a couple of really good points about the house hack, which, for those listening, maybe aren't familiar with the terms. She kind of mentioned it, but you live in, part of it and you rent out part of your house, whether it's a duplex or your bedrooms. So apart from that, do you have any tactical advice that people could walk away with? They don't have a ton of capital.
Yeah, I think, like, finding a partner,
Yeah.
first of all, and then if you don't have a ton of capital, how can you get a ton of capital? And I think
Mm.
this is the most often
Yeah.
overlooked method because it's the biggest, like, no-brainer, but it's simple, but it's hard. It's hard to do. So can you look at your expenses and cut your expenses so you're able to save? Can you increase your income, whether getting side hustles, being a DoorDash driver? Are there other ways for you to find capital? So first the partner, then decrease your expenses, increase your income to actually save the money. But then there's also tapping into other assets. So where do you have capital that maybe you're not even aware of? So if you already have a primary residence, could you get a line of credit on the equity in your primary residence? So you're not touching your mortgage at all. You're getting that line of credit to fund your deals. Do you have a brokerage account that you're invested in the stock market that's not retirement? You can go and get a line of credit, and that brokerage account will be collateral. And you usually get a really good interest rate because that brokerage account is so liquid. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're not paying your line of credit. Okay, we're just going to go and sell your stocks and take the money. So that way you don't have to pull your money out of the stock market, and you're getting able to use capital from that line of credit to invest in real estate. Then
Mm.
there's also your 401k at work. You can usually take up to 50% of it or max $50,000 from your 401k where you're borrowing it from your 401k. So there's no penalty. And then every pay period, you're just paying it back with interest, but that interest is being paid to your 401k. It's not being paid to a bank or anything like that. You're borrowing from yourself. The downside is you are pulling your money out of the stock market, but if you can get a better return through real estate, then it shouldn't really matter. So I
Yeah.
think looking at some of those avenues first are a great starting point.
Yeah. I love kind of it feels like you're talking about also having kind of this abundance mindset versus like a
Mhm.
lack mentality of, gosh, I just don't have money. This is only for these types of people. And looking at it from a creative lens of like, well, where do I have potential money and how can I, get some of that capital that I need? And so, I'm thinking of partnerships and then the loans that you talked about on different things, whether it's a brokerage account or what have you. There's some inherent risk to this. Have you ever seen some of this go sideways? Or I guess in your experience, obviously you're very successful, but of course, the side of me that's like conservative is always worried, like, what if worst case scenario? And now I've got all these loans and I,
Oh,
need to
I
balance.
am super conservative and I am very like, I just want to sleep at night because there has been times where like I have a couple projects going and it's like, okay, I really need this one to wrap up to pay off this and stuff. And it can get nerve-wracking. So like as I've grown and scaled, I do not take on a project that's larger than what I have on line of credits. So I say still may use a private money lender or a hard money lender, but I have those line of credits that if it did go south, I can tap into those line of credits and pay off those lenders. So I use those line of credits as like an emergency fund. I could go ahead and use those lines of credit to fund my deal, which I have.
I
I
see.
have done that. But sometimes it's like not that big of a difference in what the interest rate is. And then I feel way more secure having the line of credits as a safety net, or if my rehab budget goes over, I have that money to tap into. I also keep a couple properties paid off free and clear. So worst case
Um,
scenario, I can't pay off a lender. I am going and I could say to them, I have this property. Can we transfer the lien to this property? And, I'll keep making payments, but you at least have some collateral now so I can sell this other house or whatever it may be. Never had to do that, thankfully, but that
yeah.
is an option there. So I think like definitely not over leveraging yourself and having equity because I could always sell a property too. And yes, that like takes time, but I think that knowing that I have so much equity that's built up over time that I could go ahead and sell something to pay someone off. And I think as far as like my investments, as far as like my brokerage account, putting a lien onto those, if I wasn't able to pay, then they would take that money out of my brokerage account or take that money out of my 401k, and that's the fact of it. I almost feel like I'd rather it be in that situation because it's not like a person that I owe
Right.
money to, and it's not like like a house is getting foreclosed on. It's like, okay, you didn't pay, you owe this, we're going in and we're taking the money out of your brokerage account. So I
Yeah.
almost think that's like a less risky way. Like, yes, it stinks to
Right.
lose that money that you had, but either way, you're going to have to pay that debt somehow.
Yeah. Interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that as far as taking out like a line of credit as kind of like a cushion. Like maybe
Yeah,
you're not going to really use it for everything, but you've got it as a backup, which
yeah.
is interesting for me to think about with my own properties.
And I
Uh,
don't think of like that as like your reserves. Like you should still have your reserves in place. And like
uh,
if you're doing a rehab to have, budget 20% above what you think for contingencies, things like that, and have that money available. So this is just like extreme, extreme. Like you don't have the cash. Um, and like back to the W 2 thing, like I think
yeah.
it's great to like stay in your W 2 as long as possible because you could use that money to funnel into these type of instances where maybe somebody moves out and all of a sudden you have this vacancy longer than you expected. You could use your W 2 income to cover that mortgage payment too. So I think
Yeah.
there's lots of options to kind of secure yourself financially.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So many different ways to go about this, which is also why I just love it too, is the creativity is kind of endless in a world that I thought was so rigid. So the more that I learn, the better it is. Um, with creative financing, I have always been afraid of it. And so for the listener who's maybe not as familiar with different creative financing options, can you kind of speak to what those are, or maybe even give like a specific deal that you've done using creative financing to?
Yeah, sure. And to the fear factor is to don't, yeah, fear factor. The fact is like, if you have an attorney involved, like don't try and do
Mm,
this on your own. Hire an
yeah.
attorney to help you with this, and that will like ease your mind a lot, and you'll be able to see what you can and cannot do legally. Everything will be written out. Things I don't even think of, my attorney will think of as to like, okay, well, this. So every time we do a contract, whether it's traditional financing or whatever it is, he always calls me and we go through it all to like make sure I'm not missing something or he's not missing something. So I think hiring an attorney, whenever I purchase a property or close on a property, it's like $1,000, maybe $1,500 if it's a little more unconventional of a closing with like creative financing or things like that. It is well worth the money to hire an attorney to help you
Yeah.
with these contracts for the creative financing.
Yeah.
So one creative financing deal that I did was actually for an investor. It was a portfolio of his properties, and I didn't have enough cash to purchase them all. So what we did was I had him select what value he wanted for each of them. I said, this is the amount of money I'm willing to pay for all of them. And then for tax reasons or whatever reasons, he specifically wanted to pick like this one is worth 50,000. This one we're going to say it sold for 80,000. And part of that was because like he owned a couple of the properties with family, so like those ones he definitely said were lower dollar amounts than the ones he owned himself. But so and then what we did was I used my line of credit to purchase part of that. And then we did seller financing for the rest. So this was an all cash purchase. And then my goal was to go and refinance them individually so I could pay off my line of credit and I could pay him off. So we did seller financing for over 12 months and it was interest only. So my payment was really low because I'm not paying principal, I'm just paying interest. So we did that for 12 months and on the it was literally the exact day I closed on my refinance and his check was due, and we closed on that and his seller finance was paid off. So
Wow.
seller financing is a really good way I like to get creative.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in the market for that right now as we're kind of shifting more into maybe a buyer's market where things aren't so competitive that why would I do seller financing when I can sell it for top dollar on the market to someone and get all my cash now. So I'm
Yeah.
working with an investor right now where he has a portfolio of properties and I'm trying to do seller financing with him also.
Oh my gosh.
The second example I'll give is like on the commercial side of lending. You can get a commercial loan and they're not as strict on their lending criteria as far as residential. Like residential, you have to have the down payment. You can't go to your friend and they can't loan you the down payment. If you get the money from a family member, it has to be a gift. You cannot owe that money back to them. They have to write a gift letter. But at commercial, you can get the money from anywhere as long as that money you owe to somebody else, the deal can cover it and it's not overextending the deal. So, for example, I can go and I can get 75% a commercial loan on the property, the value of the property. And then I could put 5% down myself in cash. And then I could do another, you know, 20%. Is that, yeah, that
Yeah.
20% to a private money lender or even seller financing and say, okay, the bank is going to lend me 75,000. Can you hold a note for 20,000 and I'll come to the table with 5,000, if it's $100,000 deal. So, and there's also ways to get creative on the commercial side of lending too, than just doing your strict residential lending.
Interesting. I didn't know that about commercial lending. I'm so familiar with just the most basic loans, and that's why I've been consuming a lot of your content more recently too. And I've, heard Bigger Pockets podcasts in the past, but it's so nice to get exposed to this different side of like, oh, there is this other option with commercial real estate. Um, if I guess let's use, can I use my condo as an example and just kind of give
Yeah.
you like, what would you do? So I have a condo in Seattle and I have it, it's been a long-term rental, just like buy and hold. And it's basically like breaking even, but I have like a decent amount of equity in that. So, and then I also have a condo in California, and that's another long-term investment. We're living in that now with the idea that we would rent it out, but I don't think it's going to cash flow like anytime soon. So that's another long game situation and kind of an emotional purchase as well, I suppose. But what what would you do if you had these two properties and, I've got the Seattle property and I want to acquire more? Would you do a HELOC, which is like I think, line of credit, right?
Yep.
Or what strategies would you be considering?
Yeah, and you could also probably do a line of credit on both properties. So it's like all encompassing. So they'll appraise both of them and take the equity in both and give you a line of credit. I have that on two of my rental properties where it's just one line of credit, but it's the collateral is both of them on it. And
Mm,
it's just
okay.
simpler. Then you have a larger line of credit.
Yeah.
So that's one option you could do. Uh, as far as like the one you're living in now, looking at, and I guess both of them as to like, what is the appreciation opportunity? Like,
Mhm.
look at 5 years from now, how much appreciation will be in these properties? Like, even if you decide to move out of the house you're in now and rent it out and you're losing money and you have to cover part of that payment, does the amount of appreciation and equity you'll gain over 5 years worth it? Because think about it, people put, $2,000 a month into the stock market. That's money they're investing there. They're not getting, I mean, yes, some people get dividends, but it's usually if you're putting in $2,000 a month, you're not getting that amount in dividends, back to you or more. So, like, that money is sitting there for them one day to cash out. And I think of that the same as the property. Like, especially as the market is shifting, there may be certain circumstances where you can afford to cover part of the payment because the equity and the appreciation holding on to that property is going to be so much more worth it than
Yeah.
if you sold right now and broke even on the property.
Yeah.
So we have one property that we bought in an area that we are just like, even just the year that we've had it, we've seen so much
Yeah.
appreciation and just so much being done in the neighborhood. We cash flow, I think, $20. And like, as insurance and property taxes
Yeah.
keep increasing, like, yeah, we'll try to increase the rent, but we have like great tenants in place right now that like, we don't care if me and my partner each have to put in $500 a month. Like,
Yeah.
we really want to do whatever we can to keep this property for 5 years because the payout is going to be worth it because of the equity, and then our tenant is paying down part of the mortgage. So
Yeah.
I say this with extreme caution as to like anyone listening, don't do this unless you know you absolutely can continue to afford those payments, and that you like are pretty sure this area is going to keep appreciating
Yeah.
over time because it could be super detrimental. So this is a very, very risky thing to do because I mean, really, you don't know. You could be ready to sell in 5 years and then all of a sudden another pandemic hits and everything goes down. But then you hold on to it a little longer and everything could go up again. So
Yeah.
who knows? But I
Yeah.
think I always like to use a 5 year timeline when I look at my properties of what I should do with them. And I
Mhm.
look at, okay, what's my cash flow as a long term rental? How much equity has been built up from mortgage pay down, from appreciation over those, 5 years? If I sold the property right now, how much money would I get and what could I do with that money over the next 5 years? And what does that number turn out to be? So think of it that way too, as if you
Interesting. Yeah.
did sell one of the properties and took that cash, what return would you be able to get over the next 5 years? And then you can kind of figure out, okay, over the next 5 years, which is the better path for me.
Yeah. I actually really like that you shared that because I've often wondered if we made a mistake in purchasing this condo. Like, not really,
Yeah.
it really is. We did it with intention. This particular area, we're like literally seeing growth outside of our
Mhm.
window. And so that was the idea, was like, this isn't a good area. We could, if we did rent it out, we'd be having to put a little bit of money into it initially. But I think over the course of 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
there would be huge appreciation potentially. So that's something to consider as well. But then it gives me pause for thought eventually with the Seattle property, just because if I were to sell it, that would be a way to get some capital to then reinvest in other properties as well. So there's probably a lot of different ways I could go about this, but
Yeah, and if you sold the Seattle property, you could take a chunk of the money from the sale of that to like cover the payments for
yeah,
several years on the California one. If you think
yeah,
that would have greater appreciation over time, you'd rather hold on to that one too. Just like put in a high yield interest rate,
yeah.
savings account or something like that.
Right. I mean, ideally, the plan would be to hold on to both if we can,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I was able to get one of those low interest. I refinanced in the pandemic. And so
Yeah,
it's like one of those where I'm like, this almost doesn't make sense. Like I have to hold
right.
on to it. So
I was reading this article the other day about like how people are stuck right now. They're stuck in their houses because they, have a low interest rate and they don't want to sell because they'd lose that. They couldn't afford as much, moving to a different house because it would be a higher mortgage payment.
yeah,
And so I thought that was like pretty interesting and
yeah.
accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that too. And it's an interesting thing. Like the market is so wild.
Yeah.
For different areas. So here's another thing that I'm looking at is, of course, out of state. Like you have a lot of guests on, and you guys talk a lot about properties that are in the Midwest, for example, and like looking at that. Are you invested in lots of different states? And if you were kind of in my shoes or somebody who's a little newer to this, what are some of those areas that you would be looking at or targeting?
Yeah, so all of my investments are around Buffalo, New York. So
Oh,
I've done 2 flips out of state in Seattle, Washington, but I had a partner that took care of everything as pretty much just the capital. But I've done a couple episodes with Henry Washington and Dave Meyer where we get homework from Dave, where we have to go and pick a city and we have to go through why we would invest in it, why it's a good deal, and things like that. So I would really look at the Midwest, especially for long-term rentals and for flips. I specifically like Ohio region, especially like I am getting more drawn towards the Rust Belt, as far as
oh,
like even like Erie, PA, going along Cleveland, like those areas too. They're not as well performing as far as like running the numbers and looking at the data. They're not as good as like Columbus, Ohio, or Indianapolis, Indiana. So they're definitely better performing, but also there's more competition then. So like Tony just went to Oklahoma City, and he for 2 days him and his son toured all over,
I've
and
heard
he's
that.
done a
Yeah.
ton of research on that market. And he's making offers left and right, but so far none have stuck. But you know that doesn't mean that it's not, that it's not the right market, that it's over competitive. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say like the
Okay.
Midwest.
So interesting. Just looking at different areas and it's different for different strategies. So it seems like, for short-term rentals, if you're looking at potentially Airbnb type properties, that might be a different area or state than, long term.
Yeah.
And so you've, got such a rich history, and I know you're big into like what you're doing with the remodel. My gosh, what am I trying to say? Like rehabbing a home and like doing a fix and flip. So that also is something that always I think to myself, like, how do you get money for that? Like, it just kind of my
Mhm.
mind goes on those as
Yeah.
well. Like, how do you know that it's a good deal? And you're like, gosh, this is easy for me to fix to the point where I'm going to get the value back and this is going to be a win.
Yeah, so I definitely started off very small. Like the very first property that me and my partner bought, we were going to put vinyl plank flooring in, replace the cabinets, the countertops, but it was like I knew what Lowe's cabinets I wanted and the Formica countertops I wanted. So like it was not a big thing. Oh, and then paint.
Yeah.
And my partner had a roommate at the time, and he told his roommate, I won't charge you rent this month if you go and do the labor on this for us. So that actually worked out for me.
Yeah.
But I started off very slow with cosmetic stuff, just like flooring. And I always, starting out, I had partners. So after that first pass of partner, when I started taking on a little more rehab where I couldn't just like say, hey, can your buddy, or, it's like
Yeah.
not really hiring contractors. It's just like finding somebody that I know. It's like, hey, can you do this flooring? I'll pay you like $1,000 or whatever, like old high school friends and stuff. Like, can you do this little bit of drywall? So when I did that transition, I took on a partner who knew construction and knew rehab. So my very first like really big rehab was a 4-unit commercial building. And we actually bought it right before COVID. So we were rehabbing it through COVID,
Wow.
which ended up being perfect because we could spend every day there working on it because there
True.
was
Yeah.
nothing else going on. We had nowhere else to be. So that worked out great and we blew through that project. But he taught me a lot of just simple things to do. And also I laid tile, I laid flooring, I did a ton of stuff. So I got some knowledge of it, but also we bid out a lot of stuff. And I learned a lot as far as like, okay, I need to have better scope of works. I need to be more detailed. And I feel like sometimes I'm still even in learning that, but the biggest takeaways was like having some knowledge of the rehab process so that
Yeah.
I can actually look at a photo and first say, okay, that's wrong, something needs to be fixed, and then having an understanding of what it takes to fix it. So Tony and I both have a situation where we paid a contractor to do like a remodel and there was no P trap put in under the toilet. And both properties were getting like this gross smell. I
Yeah.
had my septic pumped because I thought it was like backing up and stuff, but it was just there was never a P trap put in. And so, like, just having some understanding, like, you could watch YouTube videos for days of like different things. And then, I guess, like, being very detailed as possible when you are hiring contractors with what you want so that there is no miscommunication.
Yeah.
When I am ready to rehab a property, I walk through the property. I have my notepad, I have a pen, and I am just writing down, like, even if I don't know what the fix is, I'm just writing, like, door jamb looks off center, question mark, question mark, like,
Yeah.
and I go through room by room by room. Then I go and I type it up and I go back and I look at all my photos and like see if there's anything I missed and then I write it out room by room. And then I once it's typed out, I send it to my contractor walks the property and he'll call me and he'll say, I know you said this kind of door, but I think like a pocket door would be better here, blah, blah, blah. Or he'll say, like, what you said is kind of be expensive. I think we should do this. So then I go and I change the scope of work based on what we agreed upon. And then that's when he takes it and he gives me an estimate based upon like the final scope of work that we agreed upon. And that has really, really worked well. And then for my apartments, I have one guy usually that I use who does like any rehabs or like big turnovers that are happening in the apartments. And he has a list of every material, everything that I like to use. So he'll walk the property and he'll say, these are the things that need to be done. And here's your material and labor cost based because he already knows all the materials that I want to use, which color of vinyl plank flooring and things like that, because you can get into circumstances where, I pick out a certain tile and the guy's like, this is going to take me
Yeah.
forever. I did not quote you on this.
Yeah. I feel like so much of this too is finding some of those people who are
Mhm.
going to be really trustworthy and supportive and that are going to do a good job wherever it is that you're investing, if you're doing some sort of flip or rehab or what have you. From those different strategies, I'm really interested to hear what's like, if you could pick short term rental or like the Burr method or whatever you've worked on so far, what's giving you the most joy now? Do you really enjoy the fixers? Do you really enjoy the short term? Where is your heart having the most fun?
Oh, I'm so torn because like I have fun like picking out like have fun with the hospitality side of the short-term rentals of like like in one of them I go and I put fresh flowers in and like do little thing like I find joy in that and doing that and I want to like get to the point where I have like a little logo and every cup has the logo imprinted on it like little brand things like that excites me, but I love my long-term rentals that have tenants in it that just pay.
Yeah.
I don't really hear anything from them. The properties don't need any maintenance, things like that. Like
Yeah.
that also brings me a lot of joy. It's just, oh, their payment hit the bank account. It's in there today, like, and not having to do anything. So there's very mixed feelings there as to which one I like better, and that's why I like having a mix of both, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great answer. When I listen to the podcast often, I don't hear a whole lot of investments happening in condos, and I'm assuming that's because of HOAs and people are trying to avoid that. Is that true? And then my second question is, do you use property managers for your properties?
Yeah, I don't know the actual stats to say if that's true or not, but, I will say in my opinion,
Yeah.
I would not buy a condo because of the HOAs, and it's because I had this friend that had a property in Florida, and the HOA decided no more short-term rentals, and that was it, and it was just like, that next day, "Sorry, all of your bookings canceled," and so
Wow.
that story just always kind of scared me.
Yeah.
But I do think there's like circumstances where, obviously every HOA has different laws, rules, regulations. Renee, who works at Bigger Pockets, she was a guest on our podcast and she's bought like 4 of the 6 apartments or condos in her building. So like she's majority owner or majority shareholder of the HOA and
Oh,
like
great.
controls the building. So like there are circumstances where it definitely could make sense.
Yeah. And then property managers, do you manage your own? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
did. I did like fully self-managed, did everything. And then I hired out to a property manager when I quit my property management job. I took my properties and that guy's properties and gave them to the property management company. And they did that for 3 years. And then it wasn't working for me and that other investor. So I took all the properties back and I built out a company where we had like a couple of VAs, full-time maintenance person, everything like that. And then last year, I ended up selling him the company. It was just our properties, anyways. So it wasn't like we had any clients. We didn't want to take on anyone else. But so he bought me out of the property management company since I had built all the systems processes. It was pretty much running on autopilot for him. And I just plugged a new property manager in place there. And then now I'm back to self-managing, but, like, it is so different from when I first started, like, the systems and processes, like, I used to, cry wanting to rip my hair out because of the frustration, but, like, property management software has come such a long way to, like, automate things and, it's very of all the things I do, it's very low intensive.
That's good to hear. I've heard different horror stories of people like I've joined some groups on Facebook and stuff of,
Mhm.
people who have especially short-term rentals and um, just the different things that can come up from that. And so I think that's why I've always thought, okay, I have to use a property manager. But have you run into some nightmare scenarios? And I guess I'm sure you have, but is there something that you can give people that they can kind of use and walk away with and make sure that they are protected if they, are investing in some of these types of properties?
Yeah, I think really understand your fair housing laws if you are going to self-manage. There's so many free classes or low-cost classes you can take to know like your state laws and things like that. In Buffalo, we have homeny.org and then there's like Belmont. So usually like the local housing authority will offer these classes. And I think like taking those and like you have your certificate that you went through fair housing training,
Yeah.
but also like implementing property management software and documenting everything, like everything, like maintenance. Okay, the maintenance request was sent in. The vendor was contacted at this time. The contractor scheduled. There's a part that needs to come in. Like documenting every little thing. I just went through a lawsuit with a tenant that actually was put in place by the property management company. And then when I took back over, I was left with him. And I had so much documentation and so much evidence and he actually he owed me $4,000 and he sued me for a security deposit. So we countersued for the back rent and the judge just dismissed it because it was just we can go back and refile our claim, but they dismissed his with prejudice because he had nothing and I had all of this documentation of just all these things. And it wasn't anything that was hard or difficult to do. It was just every encounter, every interaction was documented into the property management software, and then you just print it out and you have it. So I would say document everything, even a phone call, log it in that you made the phone call, what the phone call was about. In that situation with that tenant, we only would communicate through text message or uh, voicemail towards the end of its tenancy because we wanted everything documented and we had everything in writing. So I do put like in lease agreements, like the preferred way to communicate where it's like messaging through the property management software, then it's email, then it's text, then it's a phone call last. And I would have to say very rarely does the phone ever ring from a tenant at all.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good advice just to like ultimately just take over your life in terms of the
Yeah.
details and like prepare everything and that documentation that's huge. It like covers
Well, yeah.
covers
And
you.
it's like setting the expectations ahead of time too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling them when is the appropriate time to contact, how to contact, and then just like I give them a tenant handbook that is
Mhm.
everything they need to know about their property, like
Yeah.
where the water shutoff is, like every little thing, when garbage pickup is, everything. So I try to eliminate or
That's really
reduce the
good.
amount of times they actually need to contact me too. And then for maintenance requests, it's all done. I ask them like, what's everything I need to actually fulfill a maintenance request? And it's, I want pictures of what the problem is, um,
Smart.
description of
Yep.
what the issue is, when did it happen, how did it happen, what's the urgency of this, different things like that. And then it gives me all the information that I need to actually, when are they available for somebody to come? It gives me all the information I need to just go ahead and contact a vendor. And usually, in most of the cases, I have the vendor contact the person directly to make the appointment to schedule it to come. So because or else I'm just acting as a middleman and it
Yep.
just gets messy and it's just not something I want to have to deal with. And I've never met a contractor or vendor who wasn't okay with that because it's probably easier
Yep.
for them too, just to speak with them directly and figure out a time to go.
Right. That's giving me a lot of really good things to think about too as we go forward and just to have all of that, like you said, like ready for them as much that you can kind of provide as far as this is the standards of what to expect and like this is how we're going to work through this. I think that's super helpful. Thank you for that. I'm curious what is next for you? Like what's your big goal right now that you're chasing or dreaming about?
Yeah, so finishing my live and flip, and I already found my next one. So like I'm super hyper
That's good.
focused on how, because I still have like a year and a half left. I've only been in this one for about 6 months.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm trying to figure out how I can buy this other property and still comply within my, living in this one for 2 years. So some ideas I have are purchasing it and then renting it out for the next year and a half, and then I move into the property. Another one is like, I don't know, having a partner buy it. And over
Mhm.
the next 2 years, I rehab it and fix it up. And then that way, when I move in, it's actually move in ready and I get to live into a nice house for 2 years instead of living into a rehab. So I'm not really sure yet what path I'm going to go to actually make that deal work or if the deal will even work. My offer hasn't even been accepted on it yet. But I definitely want to continue to do the live and flips. And I'm also looking at purchasing right now a portfolio over the next several years from a local investor who's retiring, ready to get rid of his properties, and wants to sell a couple each year. So I'm in the middle of figuring out how to make that work.
Wow. Do you have kind of a, gosh, it'd be great if I owned X number of properties? Is it about the number? Is it about something else? Do you have anything like that?
No, it used to be about the number. Like I wanted to get 30 by 30. Like that was such a big deal to me. And I got 30 units by the time I think like it was like a month after my 30th birthday.
Wow.
And but right now it's not because I've just been exposed to so much different cash flow. Like the market used to be so stable when I first started investing where I could say like, okay, each property I buy, I know it's probably going to be around like $250 cash flow. That's with me putting no money into the deal, doing a perfect burr. So I would need X amount of money or, X amount of units to get to this dollar amount. But like, I just feel like there's not that anymore for me in my market, at least. And so I have no unit goal. I don't even have a cash flow goal anymore per se, but I'm more appreciation focused, and I'm
Mm,
looking at, okay, wow. And I never realized this until it's been like 10 years since I bought my first property, as to like, I have done not really anything, and I've gained all this equity in this property. So I think like seeing, okay, what will the next 10 years bring? And then,
yeah.
is that the point where I exit, I cash out, or do I keep holding them another 10? Am I doing a 1031 exchange? So um as of right now, there's just continually to add to my portfolio at just like a slow pace. I have no reason to rush. I don't need a jet. I don't need a yacht. I like, my kids are at such a fun age right now. Like, I want to purchase things that make sense into my lifestyle right now, and kind of building around my lifestyle instead of just focused on making money.
I love that. There's an element of fun and kind of like, oh, what's going to happen next? A little bit of mystery
Yeah.
too. And I like that. I like listening to you talk about what you've already got going. It's inspiring for me.
Thank you.
Um, we have a tradition, a closing tradition on this podcast where I ask the guests to leave like a final reflection or just something that they feel like leaving for the next guest, not knowing who it is. And then I ask you to do the same thing. So I'd like to share what the last guest
Okay.
left and then give you the chance to share something as well. So the quote here is it's a formula. She said, moment plus moment equals momentum. And the context around that is if we unpack it, a moment could be taking a sip from your water bottle, a moment could be going outside, a moment could be sending a text to one random person in your contacts that you haven't talked to in a long time. So moment plus moment equals momentum. And if you can remember that, then all these small things we do during the day lead to huge ROI on the back end.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And since we're talking about real estate, I like that there's ROI in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
So I'd love to
Um,
give you the chance to share something. It doesn't have to be like a quote. It can
Yeah,
be,
mine definitely won't be a quote, because I
yeah.
can't even think of, off the top of my head, a
Yeah.
single quote right now, except for like a movie quote.
No, no.
But
I mean,
um,
whatever you just feel like,
yeah,
oh, I'd love to leave this forever for whoever's
I,
next.
I think, especially since this is a women's podcast, and I don't know how many are moms that
Yeah.
listen to this, but I don't get a chance to talk about this a lot. So this is my opportunity, is to,
Please.
when the kids were really young, people always used to guilt me and shame me as to like, they're only young ones.
Yeah.
Well, they're only this age once too. And I worked so hard when they were little, and I missed out on so much, but I am so present, and I am doing so much with them right now. And I don't regret a single day that I worked really, really hard then, so that now I can be present and I can enjoy so many things with them.
Mm.
So, any moms listening, like, work hard for those several years and then enjoy them with your kids, and just, you know, maintain.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And there are quite a few, even just my friends, but quite a few women in the community who are moms. And I think that that's so pertinent. Thank you for sharing that. I know some of them who are out there hustling. Like I was literally thinking that in my mind. And, that resonates with me too, even though I'm not a mom. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Where can people find you? By the way, so many resources if people are not listening to your podcast. They should be because there's just a ton. But yeah, where can
Yeah,
people find
thank
you?
you. Yeah, you can find me at Wealth from Rentals on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And then my podcast is Real Estate Rookie, and that's under the Bigger Pockets umbrella. And then if you want some real estate investing resources, I've made a ton of downloadable stuff. You can go to biggerpockets.com/rookie resource.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. You
Yeah,
are
thank you.
exceptional. I feel so inspired. Again, I just love the way that you share. I feel like it's very relatable without being overdone. And I just feel like it's like I'm talking to a friend with you. And so I think that that's so empowering for women, especially now as we're looking at like women leaders of the future. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of women out there who want to take ownership of their lives and their finances. And you are just paving the way for people to do that. So thank you so much. It's been an
thank
honor.
you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the show today. And before you go, I just have one quick favor to ask of you. There is a really simple way that you can help support me and help support this show, and that is to hit that follow button on whatever app you're listening to the show on. I'm trying really hard to level up the content and deliver unique value and amazing guests, and just hitting that follow button is the magic that will help continue to empower that. And remember that the world deserves to hear your voice and your stories, and you deserve a place at the top.